Hello everyone. Now in this video I just want to show how to create an entity model and what are the advantages of creating an entity model. So here in this video I will give a clear demo on creating an entity model. So now in order to create an entity model we'll go on to file, new, and here we are taking a new project here. And since I always use web application, I'm just taking ASP.NET web application here. You can use any kind of like console or any kind of application. So here, since I'm just giving a demo, I just want to create give the name as entity model demo. Okay, so now I'm just selecting OK. Here I'm taking MVC model. MVC is nothing but model view controller, and I'm taking empty MVC here. So this one is creating a new project for me. Now as soon as I created new project, so let's go on and see like what is entity framework. So entity framework is an object relational mapping, which means our application and the database. Like this entity model is helping us to map between the application, like between the front end, or like I can say our entire application and the database. Okay, so this entity model is helping us to map between the application and the database. So this one, like whatever the class object which we have in our application, that one is called the object, and database is like relational database, so that's the reason we call this one as relational. So here this entity framework is helping us to establish connection between object and relation. So this is called object relational mapping framework also. And here if we go, today I'm just showing you demo on how to establish connection um, between application and data. In order to create connection between application and data, we have three types of modeling techniques in ADO.NET Entity Framework. First one is code first approach, and the second one is database first approach, and the third one is model first approach. Here today I'm just showing on database first approach. So here this means I'll create the database first, then I will establish connection to my database and the model and controller which will automatically be created here as soon as we create the entity framework. So now let's go and see here whatever the project name which I created, you can see that clearly here, entity model demo. And if I go on give a right click on this one, now I'm just adding a new item here, and my new item would be, since I don't have SQL outside in my machine to create a table, so I'm just using the inbuilt SQL which Visual Studio is giving for us. So I'm just typing SQL Server, which is already also known as MS SQL, Microsoft SQL. So I'm just selecting this one. Here you could see the file name of my database is database1.mdf. I'm just adding this one. So here you could see a message stating that uh, I'm trying to add a special file which is .mdf to my ASP.NET website. So in general, in order to use any kind of data related files, we need to have an app underscore data. So this one will go into this file will go and be placed in my app underscore data. So I'm just typing S here. So now after some time, if you could see here, you can see the database 1.mdf which we just created. So this one got added to my app underscore data. So now I'll go on to my file server explorer. Here you could see a tab named data connections. If I click on this one, you could see the database which I just created, database 1.mdf. So if I just expand this one, here you could see a tab named tables. So what I'm doing is I'm just creating a new table here. So new table, I just want my new table to be like I'm just giving some, just for example sake, I'm just taking employee data here. So I'm creating an employee table. Okay, so I'm just changing my table name meanwhile to employee table. So here, this one is my first column. I'm just changing this name as employee ID, and employee ID, as we all know, that one should be the primary key, and this one should be the unique key. And to every primary key, we shouldn't there should not be any nulls. So that's the reason, like this, we will not check this one. And since like every primary key should be an integer, and I'm just giving one more property to this one, which is identity. So this one will help me to get automatic values to my employee ID. So here I'm just giving this as my employee ID should start from 1, like my first entry, my first row, the value should be 1, and my second row should have the value uh, which has the difference between my first employee ID and the second employee ID should be 1. So that's how we are giving 1 comma 1 here. So now what I'm doing is name employee name is varchar, and I'm just giving max, and I don't mind if even if this value is null. So that's the reason I'm just doing a check mark here. Now here I'm just giving employee role. So the role of the employee, like is the designation of the employee, I'm just giving it as 50 characters. For my application, I think that will be sufficient. Here I'm just giving employee salary. So these are just the basic things which every employee will have. So what I'm doing, I'm just updating. Okay, so now this is helping me to create a table, update table. Okay, so now I created the table. What I want to do is I want to add values. I want to give values to this table. I'm just show table data. I gave right click on the employee table and I clicked on show table data. So here you could see all nulls here. Now I'm just giving the table data. Employee role will be full stack developer, and salary initially 80 will be sufficient for me. So Chaitanya, DevOps engineer, 1 lakh US dollars. Surya database admin, and I'm just giving $50,000. Okay, these are the three fields which I gave to my table. So you could see here this value is automatically getting incremented. Okay, so now what I'm doing is just doing a refresh here. Doesn't really matter. Now I just want to create entity model. So I'm adding an entity model to my project. Here I'm going on to I gave a right click here on the project name, right click, add, and again here I'm just adding a new item. So to my new item here, now I want ADO.NET entity model. Okay, so now I just searched with ADO.NET. I could see ADO.NET entity model here, and the name of my model will be model 1. I'm just adding that. And since I actually told that going going I'm following the methodology which is modeling technique, which is database first approach. So that's the reason I'm just selecting this one, EF designer from database. Okay, EF means entity framework designer from database. So this is the database which I created, and this is the object name of my database. This one is automatically it got populated here. When I give next, here I have to select the table which I just created, which is the employee table. And now I'm just doing the finish. So with this process I'm just creating the ADO.NET Entity Framework to my project. Okay, so as soon as it got added, we could see uh, like all our model will be automatically created. So that's one of the benefit with using ADO.NET Entity Framework. Everything will be automatically generated. So we don't really have to develop any kind of code for our model, or else for our controller. So the code will be automatically generated. So this in turn will reduce the development time for the developer, and it will eventually save the developing cost also. So that these are the main important two benefits with of using ADO.NET Entity Framework. Now see, you could see an EDMX file which got created when we just created the entity framework. So this is our entity table is our entity name, and these are the fields which we got. Now if we see our model, this one is our model which we just got, model1.edmx. So here if you see entity table.cs, so this is the model which we actually got. So these are all the properties which we have. Okay, these are all the table properties like employee ID, employee name, employee role, and employee salary which we got. Now what I'm doing is I'm just creating a controller for this. So in order to create controller, I'm just giving a right click on my controller, and I'm just adding a controller here. So controller here, this one is the empty controller, this one has the read and write actions. Now I want controller which in which I can use the entity framework which I just created, and I want the default views for all the proper, like for all the basic crude properties: create, read, update, delete properties. So I'm just adding this one here. Here this is asking me for the model class. Model class will be my table, employee table, and database is the this one is the object which we actually got, context class. Okay, so now I'm just adding it. Oh, so this is the important step which we have to remember here. So before creating a controller, in order to we have to build the application in order to add the controller. So this, whenever we add any entity framework to our application, we have to build the application first before adding the controller. Okay, so you could see the build status here. So the build is successful. Now I'm able to create the controller. So that's one of the important steps which we have to remember before creating the controller. Employee table again, I'm selecting this one. Here you could see my controller name is employee tables. Okay, I'm just adding. So now let's see the other benefits of creating an entity framework when my controller is getting created. Okay, so here if you could see flexible to work. As I told you before, like we have all these three features by using entity framework. Like we can code first and then we can create database and model, or else we can create database first then we can add then we can go for model and code, or else we can create the model first then we can automatically get database and code for our project. So these are the, by by having all these three, we are actually having flexibility while creating the entity frameworks. So this feature actually helps us, like whenever, like if I have I can create database first, then I can do the business application, or else I can develop the business application first. Like if at all I have all the UI developers and I don't have someone who is good at database, then I can make my UI developers to work first, and then on the other day I can make my database team to work on the database application. So this one actually making my work so flexible. And one more important thing is we can actually connect to any kind of databases by using ADO.NET Entity Framework. It's not just the SQL server or else the like which is eventually like MS SQL. We can actually connect to other databases like Oracle database or else DB2, or else we can connect to MySQL also. So that's one of the flexibility of using ADO.NET Entity Framework. These are very few advantages, and over a period of time we'll discuss even more benefits of using ADO.NET Entity Framework. So here you could see the controller which I just created. Okay, I'm not doing anything with this controller. I'm just uh, running the application. Now we can see our application here. So here if you could see my solution, I actually have the index file. Let me go to index file and then run the application. So here you could see the table which I actually created. This one is like you're seeing the table on the UI. Here if you see, here we have a an icon where we can create the new row to the table. So I'm just giving some name as Rama SAP, and that is like okay, and I'm just creating a new record here. So here I created a new record, and if we see this one is like the name has a typo error. So if at all I want to edit this record, I can go on to edit. I can do the editing here, and I can just give the space. Okay, I'm just saving this thing. Okay, so this one got populated here. So this is working fine. Like what I did, I updated a record here, and I added a new record, this one. So now let's go on to our database and see whether this one got updated in our database. So we gave our values in the UI, and now we are checking whether this got populated in our database. Okay, so now in order to do that, I'm just closing this application. So now in our server explorer, we'll go and see our data. Okay, so this is our table which we created. Show table data. Show table data. So here I'm just doing a refresh. See if you can see, I got the fourth row which I created just now, and here you could see the updated value of the first record. Okay, so this is how the functionality like update and creating new record worked from UI to the database. Now if we rerun the application, let's see other features also, like we can see the data, like the details of the developer, of the employee. And if we go back, oh, I don't want to edit this, so I'm just going back to the list. So here if I see I just want to delete some record. Okay, I'm deleting this record. So it's asking me for confirmation. I deleted the record. Now if I go into my database, let's see how this one worked. So I could see row 1 got deleted. So this is how we got the functionality, like from UI to the database, all the updations, all the like create, update, delete, all these functionalities are really working well with the entity framework. And now uh, so these are some of the benefits of using AWS.NET Entity Framework, and this is all about have creating an entity framework and some of the advantages of creating an entity framework in our application. Thank you.